Hi, this is Fernando Sosa from HaonTech.com, and this is your cybersecurity tip of the day. Did you know that when you enter a website address in your browser, like for example, Walgreens.com, BestBuy.com, or Google.com, your company name.com, when you enter the address in the browser, what happens in the back end is that the actual address maps to a number, also, or what's called an IP address, and it's very similar to phone numbers, and phone numbers and vanity phone numbers. You know, you have vanity phone numbers like 1-800-mattress or something like that. You remember the phone number when it's a word or a name, but in reality it translates into a number, and that's what actually happens in the back end. With the website addresses, this is very similar. With the internet, it's very similar. It's very simple, easier to remember a name than remembering an IP address. IP addresses are like numbers, right? Number dot number dot number dot number, and it's unique. So each address will map to each domain name will map to an IP address. And so the internet basically has this mapping translator service that is actually the backbone of the internet. It's called a domain name service, or DNS. And that's how it works. When you want to sign up for your own website, you register your domain, and basically there's a process in place where the names are registered so nobody else can take the same name, and then it's mapped to then you go in the back end and you assign it an IP address based on where it's going. So there's a lot of technical jargon into that. I'm not getting into that detail, but my tip for today is to be aware that there's a DNS service that actually takes the name of the address and converts it into an IP address that directs the traffic to the right location. Now, why am I mentioning this? Because there's hackers, there's a hacking technique called DNS hijacking. Basically, all computers, all devices, anything that goes online, that connects online and has an address of where to go to, even your email address, right? Everything has a name, a something.com, .org, or whatever. Any service that connects, any device or service that uses an address uses a DNS server or DNS service. So think about that. Anything that is online, your cell phone, your computer at home, your computer at work, everything uses this. That's why it's like the backbone of the internet, because everything uses DNS, unless they're using IP addresses directly. If they're using the names, then that name goes to a DNS service, which translates it into an IP address. So what hackers do, DNS hijacking, basically they will attempt to get your computer to use a DNS service that is not a legitimate service. So for example, it's like the middleman. It's like a middleman. So let's say, for example, you're trying to make a phone call. In terms of non-computer example, if you're trying to make a phone call and you think that you're connecting to a phone line that is, let's say, well, maybe that's not a very good example, but it basically has to do, it's like a man in the middle, right? Before you get from this place to that place, you have to have that translator that converts that name into an IP address. So your computer has a setting in their network settings that connects to this DNS service. Okay, so the hackers, they change that DNS setting on your computer. So instead of pointing to the legitimate DNS setting, it's going to point to a fake or a hacked DNS service. And typically, for example, if you're at home, your DNS setting, your DNS server, you're probably using your ISP, like Optimum or Verizon. And on your cell phone, you're going to use Verizon or whatever carrier. But there's a way to change that to point to something else. And so there are a lot of and there's no one single DNS server or service. It's a network of services all over the world. And so there's a lot of public DNS services out there, and there's paid DNS services out there. So one level of protection that you can, one layer of protection that you can have is called DNS protection, where basically before the traffic gets to your computer, it's actually checked and scanned and validated on the DNS level. So, for example, when you're entering an address in your browser goes out to the DNS server, converts it into an IP address, and goes to the server that has that IP address, and then it fetches back the information, and then it brings it back to your computer. So, if you have a DNS service that has an additional level of protection, the malware or the bad traffic doesn't even get to your computer. So it's like kind of like if you want to have a layer of protection on your computer, a layer of protection on your perimeter, like on your firewall, and then another layer of protection outside of your network, which is on the DNS server, which is outside of your network. So this might be a little bit more techy than I wanted to for a tip, but a DNS protection is an important and valuable layer of protection that you can add to your security stack. DNS protection. So I just wanted to mention that and you can have this at home and you can have this at work. There's solutions out there that you can have at home where you have, when you're like, let's say your home router is typically using the DNS server from your internet provider, but you have no access to that, no controls. If you have an external DNS service, it could be free or it could be paid. I suggest the paid one. It gives you more flexibility and more controls. You can actually have websites blocked, filtered. In addition to the other benefits that it has, you can also have blocking, and this happens outside of your network. So once you have that setting enabled, let's say in your home router, all the computers in your house will be protected by DNS protection, because all the computers will be connected to this router, and this router is connected to that DNS protection. So that's how that works. And the same concept is with businesses. This is good for BYOD, bring your own devices, for companies that allow employees to bring their own devices to work. This is one way that they can protect themselves, because it's not tied in to the network itself. It's on the external server or service called a DNS server. Okay, so if you want more information about that, comment below or reach out to me. I can explain that further. But that's another layer of protection that is important, and the hack out there is called DNS hijacking, and that does happen a lot, and you might not even know about it. If your computer is infected by the DNS hijack, you might be browsing online and actually somebody is in the middle, because your computer, instead of going to the valid DNS server, is going to the hijacked or to the a hacker's DNS service. So again, reach out to me if you have any questions about that. This is my tip for today. Stay tuned for my next tip coming up tomorrow. Thank you.